everybody, and welcome to another brand new episode of T Watches a Scary Movie. My name is T, and of course, we're talking scary movies. I appreciate you tuning in for another brand new episode. Remember, new full-length episodes go up every Wednesday night at 8:30 p.m. Mountain Standard Time on the YouTube page. If you want video, that's youtube.com/C/Theron Reynolds Scary Movie. Again, youtube.com/C/Theron Reynolds Scary Movie. And the audio version goes up on all your favorite podcasting platforms. Yes, I do release more reviews than that there throughout the week, but those reviews are strictly video versions on the YouTube page. So again, you want to make sure you subscribe to both so you can get it however you need to now. But the big Wednesday ones are always going to include things like news typically, and usually a couple reviews in that. Which, speaking of which, tonight, the movies on deck we're going to be talking is Don't Worry, Darling and Wendell and Wild. That's what we're going to be discussing tonight in my movie reviews. But first, we got a little bit of news to discuss first. It was announced that A24 is going to be producing a series that's going to be led by Bryan Fuller, who you might know of Hannibal fame, partnering with Victor Miller and Horror Inc. to create a Friday the 13th prequel series. Guys, it has finally happened. We have waited so long, y'all. So long at this point here. It's absolutely ridiculous to think that the last Friday the 13th movie we got was back in 2009. This was the remake. It has been 13 years. 13 years. And it's still going to be even another year, if not 2 years, before we see this show come on the air. Because frankly, I would imagine that we don't actually see this show hit until early 2024. I mean, I know I know a lot of people might hope for fall 2023, but I'm trying to be optimistic. I'm trying to keep myself contained and realistic about all of this here. And so I don't think we're getting this, but it was announced that Victor Miller, Horror Inc., A24, and Bryan Fuller are putting together a Friday the 13th prequel series that's going to be focused on Crystal Lake. Now, they haven't revealed any other details, but what's most interesting about this is that if you've been following the court case that's between Victor Miller and Sean Cunningham over the rights of Friday the 13th, that's basically what has stalled any progress happening to the Friday the 13th brand over the last 13 years at this point. Famously, there is the game that's on, all your favorite platforms and PC at this point. Development of future DLC stopped on that because of this court case that was going on. Any kind of movies or TV shows that were in development, merchandise, all this stuff got stopped because of this court case. And basically, it was Victor Miller reclaiming his original copyright to the Friday the 13th brand, which was really Pamela Voorhees and Camp Crystal Lake. And all those kinds of things, whereas Sean Cunningham and Horror Inc. owned the copyrights for adult hockey mask Jason and everything to do with that. And it ended to where Victor Miller regained I believe it's the United States rights to everything that he wanted, and Sean Cunningham, or more specifically Horror Inc., regained the overseas rights to things like adult Jason. The problem is that doesn't really make for great television or great movies, because you kind of need both the American and the overseas rights in order for anything to be successful. So for a while, we've been under the impression, mistakenly or not, that Jason was just going to be living under the water for a little bit longer until these two sides come to a deal, because unfortunately, it didn't seem like any deal was going to be happening anytime soon. But it was revealed, though, thanks to Larry Zerner, who played Shelly in Friday the 13th Part 3D. It was revealed that Horror Inc. is actually working with Victor Miller on this, meaning that this series has the ability to cover everything under the Friday the 13th banner. We're not just talking Pamela Voorhees. We're not just talking Camp Crystal Lake. We're not just talking Kid Jason. We are talking everything. Sackhead Jason, Hockey Mask Jason, Uber Jason. We're talking everything, folks, under the sun is covered by this deal, which is exciting as all hell to find out that we might actually be getting getting Jason back on the screen sooner than later. Now, because there's no details with this at all, It's too early for speculation because, I've been seeing folks online talking about, I don't really want a prequel series. I just want Jason and everything. Guys, shut the fuck up and take what we can get right now when it comes to Friday the 13th. Enough whining, enough moaning about you not getting the specific version of Jason that you want. There's a little bit of Jason for everybody. Stop acting like this series has ever had gravitas to it before. I'm a Friday the 13th diehard fanatic, but we need to stop acting like that shit is on a pedestal or anything. We've gotten all sorts of insanity throughout this series. We had an entry in 3D. We had an entry where Corey Feldman's grown-up self became Jason. We had an entry where somehow you got from Camp Crystal Lake to Manhattan, where Jason fights Carrie, where Jason's in space, where Jason is a demon that goes from body to body to body to body. Like, there's an endless amount of absurdity with this series. Why not take a prequel and let's just wait to see what happens with it, guys? Bryan Fuller is involved. Bryan Fuller. Give the damn man some time to work some things out, okay? So I'm stoked. New Friday the 13th series. Great news. Great news. Great way to start November off for sure. Second story. And this is almost just as big if you really think about it. So, Danny Boyle, who some of you might know from a little movie called 28 Days Later and Sunshine, another fantastic film as well. Danny Boyle recently did an interview with NME where he revealed that Alex Garland, who you might know is the writer of 28 Days Later, other films like Dread and Ex Machina and things like that as well too. Danny Boyle revealed that Alex Garland has written a script for 28 months later and that he's seen it and that he likes it. And this is the closest we might have ever been to getting a third entry in the 28 franchise. We had 28 Days Later, 28 Weeks Later came out back in 2007. 2007, guys! 2007. It's been 15 years. 15 years. And to go a step further than that, Cillian Murphy said that he would like to come back too, that he'd be game to come back and do another entry, which is so fucking awesome. I don't know about y'all, but I'm hoping, I'm praying to God that Disney decides they want to do it because, I believe it was Fox or Fox Atomic, like one of their brands there, are the ones who made these films. And Fox doesn't exist anymore. They're now a subsidiary of Disney. So I have to hope that Disney really, really wants to make another entry here because, good Lord, we need it. 28 Days Later and 28 Weeks Later are fantastic films. They're absolutely fantastic films. And it's not like this story ever was going to have like a certain amount of entries it needed to have. But if you've seen the ending of 28 Weeks Later, there was clearly a path that was laid out here. I don't care if they follow that up or not. Another story would be fantastic. And it's interesting that Cillian Murphy's talking about the mention of Danny Boyle. He'd be interested in coming back. There was a follow-up comic that was produced for 28 Days Later, around the time 28 Weeks Later came out, where his character, Jim, I believe it is Jim, right? It's been a minute since I've watched it. I think it's Jim. To where Cillian Murphy's character is actually killed in revenge for what he did to Christopher Eccleston's character and all those troops at the end of 28 Days Later. And so, clearly that's not canon, and I don't give a fuck if it's canon or not, because let's get Cillian Murphy back, fight enraged zombies. Like, I'm all about that shit, for sure. So, we might get a third entry in the 28 Days, 28 Weeks franchise. So, keep crossing your fingers. Hope they get this going and we get a green light, because horror is killing it this year. So maybe Disney will decide this is the way to go. This is the absolute way to move forward. And we're going to hope for the best with this. So, what are we talking tonight? As I mentioned, we are talking Wendell and Wild and Don't Worry, Darling. Now, Wendell and Wild, you might have seen some trailers for. It's Netflix, one of Netflix's latest releases that was directed by Henry Selick, which, if you recognize that name, Henry Selick is the guy that is behind Nightmare Before Christmas and Coraline and James and the Giant Peach. He often has those works attributed to Tim Burton, mistakenly enough, but he's the guy. He's the guy that's been doing that. And he co-wrote this new film along with Jordan Peele, another stop animation film. This film focusing on Cat Elliott, who has recently lost her parents in a tragic accident and finds out that she is a hell maiden. And with her personal demons, Wendell and Wild, is looking for a way to resurrect her dead parents. Meanwhile, in Cat's town of Russ Bank, a shadowy set of individuals known as the Klaxons are looking to demolish the town to expand their ever-reaching empire of private prisons. Now, that alone should actually kind of like stand out to you. I'm not a Nightmare Before Christmas fan. I've admitted that before. Maybe not on this show, but I've never really connected with it. I remember trying to enjoy it a lot as a kid, and it just wasn't really for me, honestly. I love the animation. I love the stop motion, the stop animation. I think that's absolutely fantastic. But the story itself just didn't play well to me, honestly. It's hard for me when it comes to scary stuff mixed with Christmas stuff. And I do like a lot of holiday horror. I love holiday horror. Y'all know I've covered that on the show here before. But something about Nightmare Before Christmas didn't click with me. And it's funny because like every time I go to Disneyland, my wife and I actually just went to Disneyland in the last few weeks here. And they always revamp the Haunted Mansion, which is my absolute favorite ride at the Disney parks. Absolute favorite. Love Haunted Mansion. And the one in Disneyland in California becomes the Nightmare Before Christmas, which I absolutely hate. I think the ride itself looks really cool, but it's just not for me. I love the original Haunted Mansion. But I digress. James and the Giant Peach, I love because I read that story. Roald Dahl is a fantastic writer, and so that's a good movie. Like that's a fantastic film as well too. And Coraline, a film that I had skipped for years and years and years. A friend of mine, Diana Mako, had recommended that a few years ago when I started this show up, and I watched it, and I absolutely loved that as well too. So I know that it's just the whole Nightmare Before Christmas thing that didn't sit with me. And so I was excited to see it, obviously, because Jordan Peele was involved with this. He had his producing partner, Win Rosenfield, back on board with this too. Monkey Paw Productions was behind it, and the cast: Angela Bassett, Ving Rhames, Keegan-Michael Key, Jordan Peele, James Hong. Like, this is an absolutely fantastic cast. David Harewood, Natalie Martinez, Lyric Ross. Like, this is a phenomenal cast. And hearing that story, I also can't really overlook the fact that it's a very black story. It's a very, very black story, because when you think about that, you know, it's about this young black woman who lost her parents tragically, and you know that's something that you know everybody, a lot of people out there know that, but especially in the black community, that's such a big thing for us, is, you know, not having one parent, or in this case not having both parents. But then you think about what the villains of this story are doing, because while it is called Wendell and Wild, it is focused on Cat, but the villains of this story, the Klaxons, they're trying to destroy, you know, Cat's town. They were trying to buy her father's brewery and buy up all these homes and get all this approval to build prisons. And what is one of the main things that affects black communities so much is private prisons. And you know, there's a story point, I'm kind of skipping around, but there's a story point in there about the way that people are treated in these prisons, which is a big thing. And that really stood out to me, because that's like, Jesus Christ, like, you know, like we joke about it, and we see kids movies featuring death and everything, and we've kind of come to the idea that's normal in kids movies. Like, you see death all the time, like even in Disney movies, it's a very regular thing to see now. And the fact that a character is literally killed and drowned in this movie, that multiple characters actually drown in this movie. This movie does not skimp on the death in the least bit. And I get it, Coraline's a very dark film as well. Nightmare Before Christmas, not so much. That's kind of really fantastical. But Coraline's a very dark movie as well too. But there are characters who are actually killed, like straight up murdered in this movie. But that wasn't even the darkest thing. The fact that these shadowy villains, the Klaxons, are trying to build prisons just speaks to something I know that shit affects me, but like that hit me deep. That hit me really, really deep as a plot point. That's insane to have that in a kids movie, because that's something that, I feel that everybody should really know about, that private prisons are evil. They're an evil fucking system out there that affects so many people, and obviously disproportionately people of color, black people. It affects us quite a bit. And all Kat wants is, she finds out that she's a hell maiden and that she has these personal demons, Wendell and Wild, that offer to help her resurrect her parents. And her life has been hell. It's been absolute hell since her parents have passed away. And so she's looking at any chance to get that loving, that loving, nurturing, caring life back, because we see her as a kid and enjoying just the most loving times with her family. And then once her parents die, and it shows her going to, group homes and orphanages. God, can't pronounce that right. And you see, she kind of becomes like this gothic kind of character. It was just something, we don't get to see a lot as well too. I know you might laugh hearing this, but black goths, they exist. They absolutely exist. And even black goths who don't dress that way, or black alternative, whatever you want to call it. And it was so refreshing to see designs like that. Because I honestly feel this could speak to so many kids out there, and I'm getting worked up talking about it. But it was very emotional to watch this and to see that kind of representation in a story like this, because that's not out there. That's not out there for stories like this at all. They could easily made this just a little white girl, honestly, and nobody would have batted an eye, honestly, and more people probably would be talking about it. But the story is incredibly, incredibly strong. One of Kat's best friends, Raul, is a trans boy, which is again, I say insane, not because it's not normal, but it's insane to get again all this kind of representation on film for people. This is going to be a very, very powerful film to a lot of people. And that's even before we even try to focus on Key and Peele, reuniting in this role, because that's a big thing for a lot of people too. That's going to be appeal for a lot. That's why it's called Wendell and Wild, I am assuming, is to market into people's love of Key and Peele back together again as that comedy duo. And they are hilarious in it. They do a great, great job. But they're also not the main characters of this story. They have their own story to where they are they're trying to make an amusement park for for departed souls, that when you die you have some place to go. And their father, who is Buffalo Belzer, who's basically an allegory for the devil, they're just trying to impress him, and they hate the life that they're currently living, so they want to use this hell maiden to help them live the life that they want to live. And there's a lot of symbolism with that as well, about using one person to get what you want, and trying to treasure what you do have, and that you can still make a life with new friends and with doing what you want to do without living in the shadow of somebody else. And that sometimes when you fight for what you want and you do what's right, people will notice. Sometimes people really will notice these things. And again, it's a very powerful tale. It has fantastic music. I'd be amiss to not mention the music of this film. The fact that the one thing I'm gonna point out here, because I am a big wrestling fan, and that the big climax at the end is set, and the timing of it just ridiculous. It is set to Living Colour's Cult of Personality, which, if you're a wrestling fan, the controversy going around with that right now. So the soundtrack on this is just phenomenal. It's absolutely phenomenal. And this is something where Netflix isn't known for doing all their home video releases, but god damn, I hope that we get a home video release with this, because I need to see more of this. And this is something where I would also love to see a TV show develop out of this as well too, because the fact that Kat is not the only hell priestess in this story as well, that Sister Helly, played by Angela Bassett, Queen, is a hell priestess as well. There is mileage there to show her adventures, or even show more adventures of Kat as well too. And I know stop motion is hell. I don't know how easy that would actually be to produce a TV show that's entirely stop motion. I would imagine the animation changes at that point. But I would love to see a Wendell and Wild TV series and show them maybe it focuses on them guiding lost souls to their amusement park, while in the meantime, Kat's up above using her powers to have them help her solve mysteries or something. I think that would be fantastic. So kudos, Henry Selick. You should get the credit that you deserve, because I'm not a big Tim Burton fan, and you're the one who brought the magic to so much of this. Kudos to Jordan Peele as well too. This is absolutely fantastic, and I know it's based on, I believe it's based on a children's book as well, that I think that Selick also helped write himself. But this definitely want to check out, folks. And you could kind of argue it's the right timing for it. I know it came out this past Friday, right before Halloween, but the timing seems actually right for like a Thanksgiving kind of movie, honestly. So check it out. It's on Netflix right now. Wendell and Wild, y'all. So what do we have to talk about next? Next, we have Olivia Wilde's Don't Worry, Darling. Now, I don't really want to focus too much on all the other shit that's obviously been said about the background of this movie and stuff. You can go look on the gossip rags for all that kind of things here. I want to talk about the movie itself here. So, Alice and Jack Chambers are living in the company town of Victory, California, and looks like the 1950s. And you have to forgive me because, I feel like I might have missed it where they said the year there. So I say 1950s. It could be the 60s. It could be the 60s. But it does look like, especially with the music in it, it very much seems like it's in the 50s. And basically they live in this, ideal life to where the men all leave at the start of the day to go work all day long. And meanwhile, the women are left at home to cook and clean and to swim and to drink and to shop. And that's all it is. It's just this ideal lifestyle that people had back in the 50s and I guess 60s over and over and over and over. And they're led in this town by, Frank, who is the leader of the Victory Project, played by Chris Pine. And I forget to mention, the always wonderful Florence Pugh is playing Alice, whereas Harry Styles is playing Jack. But Chris Pine, who plays Frank, the leader of this this town, the one in charge, has this charismatic presence to him. And as we see Alice and Jack attend a party at Frank's location, we can tell that there's something lurking beneath the surface. And I don't really know if you would want to say sinister. One of the guests at Frank's party brings up the question of, what are we doing here? What are we actually doing in this town? And is pulled off and, claimed to be hysterical and crazy and all these other things. But it brings a fascinating question up. I mean, there doesn't seem to be much actually happening. There doesn't seem to be much actually going on in this town besides, again, living this lifestyle. And so the question to the viewer, question to me obviously comes up is, what are these guys working on? Because we've seen plenty of period pieces where nefarious things are going on. Is this a Shutter Island situation to where everybody is actually in a mental institution at that point, and they're just doing this as a form of therapy? Is it like Westworld, for example, to where it's an amusement park to where you can go in and live out your greatest fantasies? Again, these are very much at the opposite ends of the spectrum, because if you think about it, Shutter Island is actually set back in that time frame at that point, and If you haven't seen Shutter Island, you absolutely should. It's a fantastic film. Don't want to spoil the ending. But even Westworld, Westworld is set in the future. And these people are going back to the Old West and living in that lifetime, but it's a game. And there's so many other concepts out there in between. One could not help but think of a movie like The Stepford Wives, to where there's obviously something a little bit more nefarious going on with all the men and all the women in this town as well too. But there's a lot of questions that get posed from this, and Olivia Wilde does such a great job with a script written by Katie Silberman, to where it's not the typical kind of horror, or it's not the kind of horror you might think where you're going to get things like jump scares in there, or you're worried about like monsters running around or anything like that. This is one to where you're trying to peel layer upon layer back. And the movie does give you some hints throughout it about what could actually be going on. And as we see things through the eyes of Alice, who begins to question what is happening beneath the surface. What am I not seeing here? What am I not catching here? Because something is clearly wrong. As people begin to disappear, and she hears stories of folks who have gone crazy in this town before, and she herself begins to slip into what everybody else is labeling insanity at this point. Is Jack gonna help her out here or not? Because Jack is the only person at this point that she's able to trust. What is Frank's role behind all this? Because as much as we might like Chris Pine, for sure, that smile is hiding something terrible behind it, and it's very interesting because I think that Florence Pugh has showed in so many films, now that she's been in, that she's like so capable of, and capable's not the word. She excels so well when it's a character just being dropped into something random at this point and being forced to sink or swim. And while it is interesting that Jack is portrayed as the head of the household, and Harry Styles is pushing out that he's the guy in charge, he's the one that's that he's the breadwinner. Alice is the one that's running everything. Alice is really the one that's running the show. And as a matter of fact, all the women in this, because Alice's best friend, Bunny, played by director Olivia Wilde, or Shelley, who's played by Gemma Chan, who you might know from Eternals, who was in Eternals with Harry Styles as well. These women are conveying such this leadership presence in the film that it's very interesting that we're set in this timeline, whether it's 50s or 60s. It's very interesting to see, because if you think back then in real life to that kind of timeline, women didn't have that kind of control. They really weren't the breadwinners, obviously. They really weren't in that position to do anything. And even one of the biggest points is that how Alice, she learns to drive, and women don't know how to drive in this town at all. It's just very interesting. And ultimately, what I will say about this film is that it does a fantastic job of setting up Alice having to solve this mystery and solve some of the darker things that are going on in Victory. But where it falters, though, is that third act. Once we do finally find out the horrible, horrible secrets lurking beneath Victory, California, it unfortunately doesn't really live up to everything that came before. And I don't know if I was expecting maybe a bigger conclusion, or maybe even a bigger climax. The climax to this is pretty fucking huge, honestly. But after the climax, it's a very steep drop-off. And I don't know if it's necessarily that I needed a bit of a coda to it, honestly, to wrap things up neatly. But I wasn't exactly happy with the way that things turned out in this story at the very end of it, at least. I'd be interested to hear a little bit more about the script writing process of it. This is something I'm going to end up picking up physically for sure. And kudos to Olivia Wilde. Again, fantastic film at this point. It deserves the recognition that it's got. Screw the drama that's going around about that. And Florence Pugh, man, that girl is good for her to keep on being one of the leading actors in Hollywood, because everything that I've seen her in has just been absolutely fantastic. Earlier this year, I watched a film called Malevolence, this fantastic horror film about a group of paranormal psychics who are trying to solve a mystery. Fantastic. We've seen her in the Marvel stuff. We've obviously seen her in Midsummer. This girl is just racking up. This woman is racking up this amazing amazing, amazing resume, and I can't get enough of her. She is such a captivating presence that you just want to see everything that she does. So this is one to definitely go and check out, folks. I don't want to spoil too much. Again, 10-year rule on both of these there, but go and check out Don't Worry, Darling. Hey everybody, I appreciate you checking out this video, whether it was a review, whether it was a new episode, whether it was an unboxing, an interview, or whatever else. I want to remind you, you can check out my separate reviews also on my YouTube page, and new full episodes go up every Wednesday night on YouTube at 8:30 p.m. Mountain Standard Time, and on your favorite podcasting platforms at 8 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, like and share. My name is T. We've been talking scary movies. Stay scared.